Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting of the DeKalb City Council, September 24, 2018. Prior to the start of this evening's meeting, we do have one consideration to discuss tonight. I would like to ask any members of the audience who would like to speak to this topic, or for that matter, any topic, to please fill out a speaker request form in the back of the room. Give it to our City Clerk, Lynn Fazekas, and she will get it to me, and we'll get you on at the appropriate time. And we'd like to, again, remind any folks who would like to speak that we like to stay within that 3-minute limit. Having said that, roll call, please.
Jacobson?
Here.
Finucane?
Here.
Marquardt?
Here.
Fagan?
Here.
Noriko?
Here.
Verbeek?
Here.
Favor?
Here.
Smith?
Here.
8 present.
Moving along to public participation. Lynn, we have no speaker request forms, so we will move on then to our primary consideration this evening, and that is Downtown Wireless Internet Proof of Concept Update. And with that is our Information Technology Director, Mark Thorson. Mark?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. And I'd like to start out, I have the pleasure of presenting the sort of a recap of what's gone on with the downtown Wi-Fi project, proof of concept that was approved back on August 13th. Before I dive too far, I would like to thank the Council for allowing this proof of concept to move forward. And I also want to thank the community for the feedback that I've received. And we've been working through some of the issues and some of the both positive and negative comments to find out what we can do to make things better. Shortly after the Council approved us to move forward, we started working immediately with Digital Lobby and VAC Inc. to procure the products needed and also to set up the lobby system that was going to be required. So we worked through that for about a week and a half, and we also worked with the Cornerstone team because they were a part of this project in order to get signal back to City Hall from a second point in order to help offload and make the experience as good as possible. And also, as noted in your packet, Syndio had donated an internet connection to us, so we were really thankful for that as well. All of this, as you can tell, is kind of a community effort to really pull it together and get this moving. Once the dust settled, less than 2 weeks later, I want to go over some of the internet experience that occurred. Once a user found the free DeKalb Wi-Fi system on their device, they were able to connect to that, and then they would be brought to an authentication page. There they had the choice of either a Facebook login or they could type in an email address and a zip code. And either way would authenticate them into the network, and it would then bring them to the main sponsor page. This authentication page, it should note, had the City of DeKalb logo as well as the Cornfest logo, the primary sponsor, which was NIU, and also the bandwidth sponsor, which was Syndio. The main sponsor page is NIU for the proof of concept. This was done at no charge as part of a partnership and a collaboration to help this along, and was displayed as soon as a user got past the authentication page. And that brings us into the lobby page, which Digital Lobby had set up a special Cornfest specific lobby page for this. That included information on the event schedule, a map. It also had the social media feeds that were also on the Cornfest page were also in plain view for anyone that was that had logged into the network. So they had direct access to specific information related to the festival that was going on. And at the bottom, they had a chance to click on the Go Local section. We had a very short time frame to work on. Digital Lobby and city staff had reached out to the DeKalb Chamber of Commerce, and they were willing to provide us the ability to send information out to their membership to say, look, we can provide a listing page for you that will have whatever information you would like to put in there, any offers, anything like that, and they would do it through this proof of concept at no charge. It was very last minute, but we did get 4 businesses prior to the fest that had willingly joined on, and 2 more had joined on after, at least, during when Corn Fest was going on. So I do know that Mr. Niebergall from Digital Lobby had mentioned that a business had reached out to him after signing up for this, and really thanked him for the ability to get some visibility into this product and some visibility for that person's business. So. Also, as far as the user experience goes, we tested roughly around 200 meg downloads, and that was on a rather uncongested time period. When it started to get congested, the network started to slow down. During that time, both Digital Lobby and VAC worked together to tweak the system, try and get things to where it was better for the user experience. The idea was we wanted to provide something that was usable and was a good user experience. We did not want something that was just going to connect and then it was unusable, or even just an average experience. We really tried to put it in a position to excel. The user experience is important to us. The other aspect of this is also important to us. What can us as the city and the community learn from this piece, and what information can we take away from it that'll benefit us as a whole? So that's where the analytics piece of this does come in. We had over 400 logins during that 2.5-day period for Corn Fest, and we were able to ascertain some information. We had roughly 22% of those logged in as Facebook, and the remainder logged in using just an email and a zip code. But of those that we were able to gain from the Facebook login, we were able to get some additional insight into people that were in that area. For instance, we can determine age demographics in ranges. The vast majority were in the 18 to 34 range. We also found that there was an even split, nearly even split between men and women. And we were also able to determine how many people had returned versus how many new people had logged in. So there's a breadth of insight that we can gain from this, and we can start figuring out what we can do to make this actionable information as a community between staff and also the Corn Fest committee and anyone else that would like to use this information. We also had information on location. This was garnered regardless of how the person decided to log in. And the vast majority, as we expect, were from the DeKalb area. However, you are able to see now empirically that there is a group, like sort of a spread among the western suburb area, and you can kind of get some insight into the reach of the festival as well. We can see logins from as far away as Kentucky and state of Washington, Missouri, and some other areas, Virginia. So, the idea is that while those are sort of the outliers, it's still important to know that those people having a good Corn Fest experience could go back to those areas and talk about that favorably. So that is something to keep in mind. I'm going to slip back one slide for an area that was a latecomer. This system wasn't entirely completed before we were able to get it online. So I was able to get these statistics called passersby. This is essentially any device that happens to be in range of this wireless system. And it just counts it as a device. We really know nothing more than there's a device out there that tried to talk to our network and we just recorded it as a unique instance. So during this time, we were able to break it down by day. And you can see on August 24th, there were 86,030 devices that connected to the network. On August 25th, 120,216 devices. Now, understand this does not directly correlate to people. This is specifically devices. It's also a little bit misleading because traffic was getting rerouted along 38 around Cornfest, which was also in range of the Wi-Fi system. So it was also picking up traffic going by as well as people within the festival. Now, that in itself is good information to know regardless of how many passers-by will go through there. We took a very conservative estimate of about 60% on that number. So we said, okay, it's about 60% of those devices correlate to people. And that's the number we're working off of right now. So that would mean that on August 24th, we would estimate about 51,000 people, and so on and so forth. So this is information that we can use. One of the things that we're working on with VAC and Digital Lobby is to target specific access points that are out of range of the drive-by traffic to see if we can get counts of people that are within the festival and within that walking area. And so we're breaking those areas up into zones now, and we're working on seeing what information we can glean from that as well. So all of this information is essentially a starting point that council can determine how much further we would like to go with this, what direction we would like to go with it, and staff can provide additional insight depending on how we decide to use this information. So moving forward, we're very interested in what council thinks. We would like to, we would value that feedback, and I would also like to mention that in the upcoming time, I'm working with Digital Lobby to come up with a site agreement and a master license agreement to present to council and the public for discussion to see if this is something we would like to move forward on further. We have about 30 more days left in this proof of concept, so we would like to be able to set the stage if council wishes to move forward with this. We want to make sure that the foundation's been laid, and we can. And with that, I would be open to any questions or and any feedback whatsoever.
Yes, before I turn it over to the City Council, the Alderman, I have a couple of questions. One is, during this concept period, which you say we still are in, have we utilized this for any other event?
Yes, we set up a secondary event page this past weekend for the 10K race as well as the Taste of DeKalb.
That was where I was going. Any preliminary numbers? Any problems unique to this weekend as opposed to problems during Cornfest?
So not off the top of my head, I don't have those numbers handy just yet, but there's some additional numbers that we have that I can't access through the dashboard just yet. The connectors haven't been set up yet, so I'm working with Digital Lobby and VAC to be able to get that information to you. Okay. But I can certainly present that as well. Okay,
as this was rolled out, and I know somewhere I picked up this card that had been printed by the city. I don't know if other people have seen it. Was free Wi-Fi. Where was this available, and how successful were we at engaging students from Northern? Any thoughts on that?
So I'm glad you brought that up. The city manager's office was really helpful in being able to develop that. And we also had a booth at Cornfest for the city, and that's where we had those, and we were actively handing them out and answering any questions that we could. That's where we were able to meet directly with the public and get feedback on their experience with it as well. So we were able to hear both the good and the bad with it. So, but that was at the on 38 during Cornfest, over by the community stage is where our booth was set up.
Have we had a chance to utilize this service at the farmers market?
Yes, it's actually Van Buren Plaza is an area that's there's multiple access points concentrated in there.
I would hope so, yeah.
Absolutely. So, yes, and we've been able to get some daily ticks of people logging in and people that are returning, so on and so forth. As this is going along, it's keeping a rolling tally of that, just on the farmer markets and average days. What I would also like from a city standpoint is the passers-by numbers would be really, really critical for economic development and also public safety purposes, to be able to understand where the congregation of people are, how much traffic's going through there. From an economic development standpoint, we'd like to know how many eyeballs are on the building, because that's marketable material and marketable information that could be used. So,
Great. I have a few other questions, but I think I will keep my mouth shut for a couple of minutes and see what other members of the council might have questions or comments. Alderman Fanouken.
Mark, on the zip code list, how does the device identify that it's from a particular area?
So sorry, I was pulling up that page. So there's two ways. If a person uses the Facebook login, Facebook in your profile settings has your zip code information
Right.
in there. Otherwise, people would actively put that in along with their email address. It requires both the email and the zip code to be able to log in.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Alderman Enrico.
So if someone was driving on the perimeter of the area and they had a smartphone and their tablet, that would count as two devices. So that's why the numbers the number of people is less than the number of devices.
Correct. And one of the things when we were trying to figure out a good conservative estimate to determine how many actual people that might represent, one of the things we were talking about was the family vehicle that has multiple devices in there, but maybe more devices than people. There's also commercial vehicles that, especially like over-the-road commercial vehicles may have multiple devices in there with only one driver. So we tried to take into account what could be there, and then come up with some sort of a conservative estimate to figure that out. But that is definitely why there is more, why that we consider there's more devices registered than there are people.
And can you tell exactly, where the person was, in other words, so that you can determine that there was a concentration of people at First and 38th versus Third and 38 or something?
That is absolutely possible, and that's something that we're talking with Digital Lobby on how to determine, and maybe we can get a heat map or something along those lines that could visually tell a story of where where the congregation points are and things like that. That's certainly something that we can investigate. It's possible with that.
Because I would think, particularly for public safety purposes, if there's a chain, and I would imagine there's a change throughout the day, how patrols are routed and so forth, so.
I think that's a wonderful thing about this is a starting point for us, and working with council and working with the public to determine what type of path this could take and what makes the most sense for this city. We are basically, as staff, at your disposal as far as being able to bring things to you, and we can also talk to you about what the possibilities are. Ultimately, we want to make sure that we're working within the guidelines of what is acceptable and what is the most effective way to make informed decisions for any type of policy or whatever.
Any other comments? Alderman Favor.
Yeah, I, like Alderman Noriko, I had questions about the number of devices, and so I just signed in and logged in. So first, the number of devices those are unique MAC address, is that correct?
Correct.
So theoretically, if an address kept showing up over and over and over again, potentially you could classify that as a local, or you could start to filter out some of these recurring. So if there was an event going on in DeKalb, you could maybe, and of course, how much data do you slice off without impacting the results? But potentially you could look at to see how much an event draws people outside of DeKalb. You could filter out the most seen or the highest probability MAC addresses that show up in the area. And that might, I'm just kind of spitballing some ideas of how to use the data, because that's what's going to be, I think most people are interested in knowing, is how many people really come to downtown to an event, maybe in something at the Egyptian Theater, or like this race the last weekend here. Then the other question, I guess, is, I'll just ask, so I put in my zip code and my email address. Is that now tied to the MAC address of my device?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, when you log in, it ties that, and that's how we can differentiate return customers versus new customers and start to differentiate that. And going deeper into what you're saying, the slicing and dicing, everything that we've collected is what I've presented here. I just want to make sure that that's clear as well, is there's what we can see in the dashboard and what we have access to is essentially outlined in this report. And anything that I've talked about that says, all right, if we can target in on certain zones to see if we can isolate driving traffic from foot traffic, that's all still represented in what we're seeing. It's just a matter of isolating one access point versus taking all 11 of them into consideration. So there's some things on that as well that I just wanted to clear up. Yeah.
So, and obviously this is much more complicated and might require a little more processing power, but obviously for the traffic that's passing through DeKalb, as they go past the different access points, there could be a time period, you know, a number of seconds, and you could eliminate those potentially, because that's a car or that's a moving target, so that's not someone who's stopped in downtown. Just ideas to try and refine the data to make it more usable. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And also to whom that data is valuable. You know, my question is, has the Chamber of Commerce been involved in this program and in this experiment, if you will?
So we've approached them a couple of times on this, and one to initially just introduce the idea and get some feedback from them as well. And most recently was when we were trying to populate the Go Local page, and we felt that the best approach to this was to reach out to the chamber and work directly with them and find out who might be interested in this. So there's been a couple times when we've talked to them, and frankly, they're going to be very involved if the council decides that this is something they would like to continue and move forward, because that Go Local page would be greatly benefited from working in hand in hand with the chamber and making sure that they're addressing any of the chamber's needs and so on and so forth. That does not exclude any other businesses that would be interested in this as well. It's just a good point of contact to be able to kick this thing off.
Yeah, I think what you've suggested is that this has boundless opportunities for the city of DeKalb. Any other comments or questions? Yes, Alderman Favor.
I was just thinking again, I was in Green Bay last week, and you know, when I woke up, you know, on the phone there was a thing, you know, best coffee places in Green Bay or best breakfast in Green Bay, and it's like thinking of the different coffee shops or other places, restaurants and things downtown that obviously could utilize this portal as an advertisement or an awareness generator.
So to walk through how you think law enforcement, I don't know if you've talked with Gene about the possibilities of this particular program, if you will, but perhaps you can elaborate a little bit on that?
Absolutely. With Chief, we've, I think, talked just briefly on this and come up with some rough ideas that we're still trying to refine what makes sense and what doesn't, and what's useful versus what might be, you know, so we can certainly being able to understand where traffic is, where congregations occur, that sort of thing might be useful. Those are just some ideas that I had, but I would definitely defer to public safety to see what their thoughts are.
I think the biggest value for the police or public safety period is the volume of people and where they go, time of day, what days, especially for the downtown area. If you see certain times of the day or certain events that start to track a large volume of pedestrians or whatever, it could be a good reason to deploy a foot patrol. Depending on the event, it might call our attention to have more staff at that location. So it's really kind of a precautionary measure, or give us some trends. And we do the same thing when we go up and do neighborhood surveys or traffic studies. So it's just another tool in the tool chest.
Mm-hmm. Good. Any other comments or questions of Mark Thorson?
Mayor, can I interject?
Yes, City Manager Talkington.
I just wanted to say that this is great information, and where you've started off, I think you have a lot of valuable information here, and clearly you guys are thinking of more long-term uses and ways that we can do more with the data. But to bring it back to budget, so we're having our budget workshops. So this is something you need to consider of what service level do you want provided by the IT department, and how do you want that staffed, and keep that in mind as we go forward when you're thinking about these applications or use you can use this for.
You talked about a 30-day window within which decisions must be made, or at least within which this is up and running. What will this council be asked to do as it relates to digital lobby and something akin to that? Is that a fair question?
Sure, Mark.
Oh, absolutely. So there are two agreements that Digital Lobby looks for. That's not a binding agreement per se, but more of a show of commitment to what could be. And at that point, it would outline all of the terms and the typical contract information. But it would also outline what Digital Lobby would like to do. And that's because Digital Lobby is, in essence, a marketing company. Mm-hmm. They market, they have a specific channel that they look for, but that's the piece that they would be looking at to help fund an expansion of this project and make a full use of it, so to speak. So that would also include being able to advertise in areas in town. That would also be able to work with the local business community and helping them to raise their visibility through these various channels. There would also be opportunities at festivals to have a kiosk there that has sponsor information that would go along with it. So those are sort of the, just to give you just a brief kind of overview of some of the things that would be asked for in that agreement. Once those are approved, should the council decide to approve them, once those are approved, there's a third agreement that's required to actually make it binding, and that's the notice to proceed. And when that notice to proceed would outline exactly what Digital Lobby would like to do as negotiated with all parties involved, and as long as it's okay with council and that's approved, then they would go ahead and start. So just to give you a very high-level view of what this would look like moving forward.
I recall when Mr. Niebergall, I believe that was his name, from Digital Lobby came, there was a indication that the information or the program itself would allow that company, Digital Lobby, to derive income from advertising, et cetera. So I think not only is that important to us as it relates to our potential costs, but from my layman's view of this, there are other potential partners out there who could share in this cost. I mean, I'm thinking of Northern, I'm thinking of another city, I'm thinking of the chambers. And when I say chambers, I mean, you know, why couldn't the city of Sycamore get involved in this same program with us? You know, we talk about collaboration and partnering so much and how important it is to us as municipalities. Again, maybe I am running off of the mouth here a little bit, but ideas continue to spin in my head.
So, and this very much is a joint project with NIU. So very much have I been working hand in hand with them as we've been going through this process. And the idea behind the marketing aspect of this, which I did like about Digital Lobby, is that they focus locally. They do want to work directly with the community and the businesses in the community to help them with this process. And the other aspect of it is we would like to ask that this project get expanded at no cost to the city or the university, and that the company would then make that up on their marketing dollars.
Good.
So that's very much in play as far as options go. There's quite a few different ways we can be creative with this to get it done in a way that's feasible to the city, to the university, and the community as a whole. So.
Your last few sentences make me feel a little bit more comfortable because, you know, we look at dollar signs. We look at monies that it is going to cost this city. And through our initial budget workshops, it's been very apparent that this is going to be a very frugal city council based on the projections. So any time that we can get bang for a small buck as opposed to a lot of big bucks, I think it makes more sense. Wouldn't you think? Okay, any other questions or comments about this particular chapter in our technology? If not, thank you, Mark, and I would entertain a motion to adjourn this Committee of the Whole meeting.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Alderman Norrico, seconded by Alderman Verbeek, that we adjourn this meeting. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? So move. We are adjourned. City Council will begin promptly at 6 o'clock.